Hello, Family Church. I want to send out a little video to invite you guys into something with me. Many of you have already been doing our 31 days through the New Testament along with a couple of the churches. I hope it's been good for you guys. I know it's a little bit challenging sometimes just to get through all the reading. It's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. I personally like to listen to it, have the Bible app read it to me, and then I just read along in my Bible. And sometimes it's felt like Jesus is preaching and sharing the word with me as I'm sitting there. And it's just been really powerful. Hope you guys have been enjoying that. So along with that though, I really feel like the Lord is inviting us into a corporate fast together. And I just want to talk a little bit about what that looks like, maybe what it doesn't look like. I haven't done this before. I have never felt like Jesus wanted me to invite us corporately into something like this together in Family Church. But part of what's happening was I was reading through the New Testament and my New Testament reading, and this verse in Matthew 6:17 on the Sermon on the Mount really just leapt out of me, where it says, Jesus says, "But when you fast." He didn't say if you fast, he says, but when you fast. And he goes on, he shares a little bit about how not to fast and then what he wants us to focus on. And so he highlights that the religious leaders would look gloomy. And so he encourages actually the disciples to put oil on their face. And that was actually part of what they would do is they'd stop doing their washings and they'd stop putting oil on, which was a part of the rituals. And so Jesus said, I don't want there to be any outward signs that you're fasting, but I want you to fast before your Father, knowing that your Father sees you in secret and that he's going to reward you. And so I think that's so powerful because it picks up really, really well with what we were going through in Hebrews with Hebrews 11:6. It says, without faith, it is impossible to please him. Speaking of God, for he who comes to God must believe that he is and that he is a rewarder of those that seek him. Some verses say diligently seek him. Some versions say earnestly seek him. But the point of the scripture is that God is saying, real faith believes that God exists and that he rewards. And so as we're fasting, and that just touches again what Jesus was talking about earlier so well in the book of Matthew, where your Father sees you. He's watching what's happening in your life. And when we do things, when we position our hearts to seek him earnestly, he's going to reward us. The other scripture that was coming to mind was out of the Old Testament. Back in Psalm 27, David says this about God's invitation to him, because I believe this is an invitation from God. He says, when you said, seek my face, my heart said to you, your face, O Lord, I will seek. And so there's this sensitivity in David and also this awareness that sometimes that God is inviting us into things to experience more with him. And so he's really giving grace to get a hold of more grace. It's not an earning thing. It's not to get him to like you more. He already loves you as much as he possibly could love you. But to remember, he is a rewarder of those that seek him. And he does invite us into things so we can grow together with him. And I believe that's what God is doing in this moment for us. So there's just a couple things that I wanted to just touch on. Actually, first of all, the date. I feel like January 15th through 28th, that starts on a Monday. It ends on a Sunday. It's 14 days. Actually, I heard Presence OC is doing a 21-day fast. Bethel is doing a 7-day fast. So there's a lot of churches that are fasting right now. I really believe it's something that God's doing in the church. So for you guys, I want you to pray and ask God, do you want me to do this fast? And if you do, what does it look like? Meaning, how do you want me to fast? It could be a Daniel fast, which you're pretty much cutting out meats and sweets and doing vegetables and grains. It could be a media fast, which I would highly recommend doing at least some of that, cutting down on your media, or whatever else you think might be distracting you from God. I wouldn't recommend doing a 14-day water-only fast if you haven't done something like that before in the past. But I want to just share a couple things about fasting that I've taken hold of. When I was younger, I used to do a ton of fasting. I haven't done a lot recently. But one of the things that I believe fasting does is it puts us in a position of greater dependence on God. It's voluntarily saying, God, I need you more. As we're giving up foods or sweets or whatever else we're laying down, it's drawing us into a place of saying, God, I really need you more than all this other stuff. I need you to help me to not do these things. I need you to fill up these spaces in my life that these other things were filling up. And so the second part is that we're just spending time with God, that time that we would be doing those other things, watching media, preparing meals, even eating food. We spend that time to seek the Lord. And we're saying, God, but I think this is a big part. We're really saying, God, I'm fasting from these things so I can feast on you. And that's actually a quote from Richard Foster, who said in his book, Celebration of Discipline, he says, fasting is feasting. And I'm just going to share this quote with you. It says, when the disciples brought lunch to Jesus, assuming that he would be starving, he declared, I have food to eat of which you do not know. And then he goes on and says, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. And so that's out of Richard Foster's book, quoting Jesus. And so Jesus was saying, hey, there's something better than the earthly foods of this world. I have something that's sustaining me, that's feeding my heart. It's feasting on God's presence. And I do think that's part of what was happening when Jesus was in the wilderness. At some point, he did get hungry, but that wasn't until the end of his fast, after 40 days when he was tempted by the devil. And so there was something that was going on in Jesus' life where the Father was supernaturally sustaining him. And I believe, actually, we can see this too with Moses on the mountain in Exodus, where it says Moses was there with the Lord for 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread or drinking water, as he was receiving the 10 commandments. So he was with the Lord. And I believe that while he was with the Lord and he was fasting, again, he was feasting on God. And so that's really what I believe God is inviting us into. And we understand that we don't do this again to earn God's love. We do it because of his love for us, because we love him so much. But we also understand that he does reward and he invites us in a partnership to move things in our lives. God's not going to do it for you. He wants to do it with us. And he wants to do it with you. And so I want to invite you guys into this partnership with the Lord. So if you want to join with me, just text me back and say, I'm in. Then I'm going to add you guys to a group list so I can send out some things to encourage us along the way. I'm also going to send out a PDF with 14 points of prayer, one for each day, that focus on things in our world, our nation, family, church, our lives. And it also encourages just even one thing in particular that you pray for personally for your life or for your family's life, or just one area in your life that needs change just every day. Targeted prayer is really powerful. You just know when God shows up and he answers it. So I'd love for you guys to join me. You don't have to. You get to if you want to. Just send me a text. Love you guys. Talk to you soon.